Welcome to the Morning Drag Power Hour. I'm Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. On today's show, we'll recap the NFL's Week 3 games and give some preview and predictions for Week 4. We'll also talk about the Royals possibly cratering playoff chances in Kansas City as they've gone on another bit of a terrible streak, a second 7-game losing streak in the last month, which is kind of not why you want to go into a playoff season.
No, it's not.
Yeah, we'll talk about some other NFL stories in the Kansas City Chiefs too. Mike, after the NFL's Week 3 now, what have you found more surprising? The like 0-3 possible playoff contenders in Cincinnati or Jacksonville, or maybe surprising 3-0 teams like Pittsburgh or let's see who's the other one that was a little interesting. Or Seattle.
Seattle or Minnesota maybe would be
Or
another one.
Minnesota too, yes. Yeah. So what have you found more surprising from that? Like those particular teams are 3-0 or those other particular teams are 0-3?
I am, I guess I'm more surprised about the 0-3 teams. I maybe I'm more surprised about Cincinnati than I am about Jacksonville. I could
Yeah.
I was never I thought maybe Jacksonville might challenge or win the South Division this year, but I also thought it would probably be a pretty close four-way race. And I thought maybe Trevor Lawrence would have a strong season, but I wasn't predicting them to go, 13-4 or something like that. So
Yeah.
but I am surprised that they've been 0-3 and kind of the way they've been 0-3, losing to Cleveland at home. They lost to Miami, which although it was the only game that Miami played at full strength, basically.
Yeah.
Uh, and then losing this past week in the way that they did against Buffalo, just getting annihilated, basically.
Trounced. Yeah.
So that was surprising. But I think more surprising was Cincinnati because I could, losing to Kansas City in a close game, that's not terribly surprising, but losing at home to both New England and Washington, two teams that I think most people thought wouldn't make the playoffs, and they were two of the three worst teams in terms of record last year. Washington had the number 2 overall draft pick, and uh, New England had the number 3 overall draft pick. So I think losing both of those games at home to go 0-3, even though Cincinnati is traditionally kind of a slow starting team, I think being 0-3 is a little bit surprising to me. So I think the other teams, Minnesota 3-0, we had kind of thought Minnesota was a decent team. I think the Sam Darnold situation's a bit of a surprise, but we thought maybe that Darnold wasn't a terrible quarterback uh, here at the One Track Power Hour. Seattle, I think they've also played some bad teams. They played Denver, they played, Miami without Tua, and uh, I and what was that? What was the Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh always finds just a strange way to win games, and they keep everything. They kind of muck everything up and keep it close. So
Yeah.
I don't know how surprising the Pittsburgh 3-0 is, because they have a winning record every year somehow, even if they're not a great team. So, but it's maybe surprising that they continue to be uh, Pittsburgh and to win these ugly games.
Well, and they've kept TJ Watt healthy so far, I think, too, which is usually the key for their defenses
Yeah, TJ Watt's
having
been really
a good
good.
round, right?
Uh,
So,
High, yeah, Highsmith's been uh, good, and the other K word and those other defensive guys. And Justin Fields has been okay at quarterback, even though Russell Wilson's been hurt. Fields has been, he's been better than Kenny Pickett or Trubisky or any of the quarterbacks they've had over the last couple of years there. So
that shouldn't really be surprising, though, either. I mean, even on paper, we think of Fields as being a better quarterback, and a lot of
yeah,
it's just that he hasn't been able to stay very healthy.
yeah.
for like an entire season too. So that's, another at least factor anyway.
Do you think the Bears would be better off if they still had Fields versus Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I don't. That was one of those things where, like, you almost say that, if you make the change to draft number one and take uh Williams, that you're, setting back your progression again because you're like, going to another new quarterback from a guy who just was a new quarterback but had like 2 years under him. So I think that we always knew they were going to be being set back a year, but I think they had to like make that decision, probably assuming that Fields has some injury history, and if they're worried about that long term, then you may as well go ahead and make the change earlier rather than muddle through another couple of years with what, like Tyson Bagent as your
Yeah,
backup, and
and
then
I
it
think
becoming starter like during the season and have to play multiple games. Yeah,
and I think they think that Williams has higher upside than Fields does. So maybe if you
yeah,
go down a little bit at first, you'll get within the next year or two, you'll be at a higher level already.
maybe higher, and still,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that but we'll see what happens with Williams. Williams threw for a lot of yards against Indianapolis, but they came up short this past week. I think was it literally like a couple yards short? Wasn't there a Hail Mary at the end that didn't quite reach the end zone uh, that Williams threw to end the game? Isn't that how the game ended? That wasn't one of the games that I really watched.
it looks like the game ended with Indy running it out from the 2 minute warning
Oh, it was a Hail Mary before halftime that happened. So they threw a Hail Mary before halftime that was completed, but it came up a yard short. But
to the, yeah, Indy one 44-yard pass.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I guess so it wasn't at the end, it was at the end of the half. But that was a maybe again maybe missed opportunity where they lost by 5 points. Um
Points at the end of the half would have been nice there. Yeah.
yeah. Um were any of so we which of those teams is most surprising to you, either being 3-0 or 0-3, Dr. Scaff?
It has to be Cincinnati. I don't know how to argue against anything other than that because, I think there's always been high hopes for Joe Burrow, and they think they can go back to the playoffs and obviously back, all the way is what they were wanting to do. But, you don't know what Burrow's health is after being injured at the end of last season too. So you just don't know what to think, especially early with their slow starts. But this doesn't seem like it's just a slow start. This just seems like they're not very good right now. I'm a little worried about the Chiefs, though, knowing that the one game that Cincinnati did play fairly well was against the Chiefs, and they looked fairly terrible in their other two games against lesser opponents, even. So, is it just that, yeah, teams getting up for and ready for the Chiefs is enough to like bring teams up from maybe, not playing very well to looking like good teams? Or yeah, or do you think it's the Chiefs actually aren't very good? So what do you think it is?
I think the Chiefs are a good team. They haven't played that well, but I think they've also absorbed the best shots that the teams that they've played against have given anybody. Because I think
Yeah,
this was one of this is the like because I think the Chiefs being the two-time defending champions are it's seen as like the game of the season for a lot of these teams, especially
yeah,
Baltimore, which came off a tough loss in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. Cincinnati, which always plays the Chiefs tough and has actually beaten the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game before, but also lost a recent AFC Championship game to the Chiefs. And then Atlanta, I think, probably wants to establish themselves as a contender in the AFC South, and to have the Chiefs come visit. That's a big game. So I think all three of those teams, the biggest game of the year so far has been the Chiefs. But and maybe it's that the teams that play it's both the teams that played the Chiefs so far and have played again have lost their next week's game. Buffalo, Baltimore lost to the Raiders the week after they played the Chiefs,
Yeah.
and and now the Cincinnati Bengals have lost to the Washington Commanders the week after they played the Chiefs. And you can maybe say that maybe the Bengals were looking ahead to the Chiefs in game one, looking past in New England. We'll have to see what happens in these later games to really, because it's only 3 games, and it's hard to say how good these teams are. We'll really figure it out, I think, because Baltimore will play Buffalo, and we'll see how bad Cincinnati is. I can't remember who Cincinnati is playing. It's the Carolina, so it's seems probably seen as a kind of get right game for the Bengals. But it's at Carolina, and Carolina looked kind of frisky against the Raiders with Andy Dalton as quarterback.
Yeah.
Were you surprised that Bryce Young was benched and now seems to be not the quarterback of the future any longer in Carolina?
Yeah, I don't know how he has a future in Carolina right now. It's pretty shocking that, well, I mean, they did just change coaches and, again, after 1 year after drafting Young. So this is, a weird scenario where it's the coach didn't get to pick the quarterback. The quarterback was already there, and it's a young guy. So if he doesn't like him, then he's going to want to try to get rid of him quickly. Is what you would
Mhm.
assume. And that seems like what's happening here.
But you would think that you hire that guy to be the coach for Bryce Young. That's why you bring him in, because
Yes.
he's the quarterback whisperer and can do good things with him. But maybe it's as we predicted at the One Track Power that Bryce Young is maybe too small to play effectively in the NFL, and
Mhm.
um, we'll see what happens with maybe he needs a change of scenery. Maybe he had one bad season. He's only had 2 games with Canales as the head coach. So, things could change. But seeing that Carolina scored 36 points with Andy Dalton as their quarterback, and they had trouble scoring at all with Bryce Young as their quarterback, that's sort of damning evidence that he's not maybe the guy of the future.
And it was over 300 yards passing too for Dalton. It wasn't just that he was, handing it off, and it just happened that they were opening up huge runs or something. It was 37 passes to only 31 rushing attempts. It wasn't even a pass heavy offense.
Yeah.
And Andy Dalton ended up with 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. And what Bryce Young was struggling to get to like 6 yards an attempt uh, in the first 2 games of the season. So that's kind of a big difference. And that's a completely different style of play then too.
Yeah, we
So
had there
it's
were two big
surprising.
Yeah, there were 2 big surprises involving the AFC West. One was that the Carolina Panthers rolled over the rolled over rolled over Las Vegas.
Yes,
This was after Las Vegas had beaten the Ravens in Baltimore. But we
right.
also saw the emergence, perhaps, of Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. They trounced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa in what looked, and Tampa Bay had looked very good their first 2 games, but they lost this game 26-7 to Denver, who had looked pretty bad in their first 2 games. Do you think this is a fluke incident, or is this sign of things to come in Denver? And which do you think is more is the Oakland loss to Carolina more indicative of how Oakland is, or is the Denver win in Tampa more indicative of how good Denver is?
Realistically, I think at this point, it just seems like there's just a lot of fluky things that happen in the NFL so far. It doesn't seem like there are like real trends that you can say like, oh, this team is good, this team is bad,
Mhm.
or anything. It just seems like just random things happen, and teams can score a bunch of points one day and be terrible for like the rest of the season. I don't really quite have a handle on most of it this year, but I don't know. I think I'd be more surprised, I think, if Denver's actually good.
Yeah.
Because again, we don't. I mean, we just don't know where Bo Nix is going to find enough letters to to have like a full actual name though, isn't that the case?
You have to change his name to Bo, Beau, Nixon, Nixon, probably to be
Yeah.
considered to be a proper possible quarterback, at least in the Warren Sharp Power Hours view. He doesn't, yeah, he doesn't have enough, not enough letters in that name.
No. Where is he gonna find him? I don't know. He's still out.
He'll have to, yeah, he'll have to research some sort of ancestor who actually was a Nixon and they had dropped it for some reason, or maybe Nix was spelled K-N-I-C-K-S, uh,
Yes.
something like that. But
I was always hoping that it was actually Beauregard was his first
Beauregard, yeah,
name. But no.
yes. Or Boric, like remember former Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Mark Borichter.
Beauregard, yes. Yeah,
Uh,
could be it.
but yeah, any other results that were surprising to you? We have lots of 1 and 2 teams that maybe we would think wouldn't be 1 and 2 at this juncture of the season. We have Dallas at 1 and 2. We have San Francisco at 1 and 2. We have, I guess, Baltimore now winning just to get to 1 and 2. Um, do you see either of do any of those teams have real cause to worry, or do you think they're all going to be playoff teams when it comes to the end of the season? Because all three of those teams were predicted to be solid playoff teams at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I don't think there's probably a whole lot for Baltimore to worry about right now, but yeah, I mean they've got another tough game coming up this week, but
And they could be one
it
and
could
three after the
they
Buffalo.
very well could be 1-3, and who knows, Cincinnati could be 0-4. So I mean, there's always going to be concern, but there's always that extra game now too. So the 17 games gives teams a little extra room to take to warm up, I guess, before the season gets going into full swing. I do think the way that most teams have been handling the preseason though is causing these slow starts. Though I mean it, that and having that week off between the third preseason game and the first week of the season. I think it just makes the first couple of games like extra random, and players like Aaron Rodgers didn't play any of the preseason, so like he's maybe just now ready for a season to start, and it's getting ready to be week 4. So I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like teams are not really necessarily figuring out who they are very early, because I guess they know it's a long season, and maybe that's more the case than
Yeah,
anything else.
I guess one question is, do you think the way the preseason is being played, has that led to more injuries, or are they playing the preseason because there are so many injuries? We need to try to, not get them injured in the preseason because we know that many of our players are going to be injured during the regular season. It's because I think at least for San Francisco, you could say that their 1 and 2 start is a story of injuries. Christian McCaffrey has been out the whole season so far. Debo Samuel now has gone out. They have some like Armstead, I think, tore his triceps muscle. He's going to be out the whole season. Um, for
Then
the 49ers.
Kittle and
Kittle's been out. Yeah.
and they're like defensive end was out too, right?
Bosa, I think, has
Let's
been
forget, yeah, the other Bosa,
the
and then
other
I think
Bosa.
then I think the Chargers Bosa went
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
this week
Those
too. It's bad
Bosas are
bad week for
pretty, both of them are
Bosa's.
pretty injury prone, I think.
Yeah,
Um, especially Joey, I think, for the Chargers. I think he seems to be. The Chargers,
yeah.
talk about the Chargers because the Chiefs' opponent, but they had a good start in the first half against the Steelers, but then kind of fell apart when Herbert got hurt and or re-aggravated his injury, and some of the other injuries began to accumulate. But and now they're ready for the Chiefs. We'll talk about that game when we talk about next week's action. But yeah, these injuries are the Chiefs, of course, have had their injury shares or their share of injuries already with Pacheco going down and Hollywood Brown being out for the season essentially. Um,
He should have played one fewer snap in the preseason, apparently.
yeah, he only played the one. I think. I think it was the first. I think it was sort of an Aaron Rodgers type situation. The first time he uh,
Yeah. Sees the field, and then he
Yeah.
He's taken out of it. Yeah, that's yeah, not even a home to go.
Uh,
Yeah, there were a lot of really like surprising games this week, though. Like, do you think Minnesota's actually as good as they are after winning, was it 34-7 against Houston?
I think the score was a little lopsided. I did maybe this can segue into our bets now. That was one of the games that I had bet on. I had bet actually for Houston or for Minnesota to cover the spread. I think they were uh ended up being 1.5 point underdogs at home. Maybe when I bet it might have been even higher they might have been even higher underdogs um at home, but Houston ended up winning that game outright. I predicted Houston to win outright, but I was surprised at 34-7. Houston, I mean, I predicted Minnesota to win the game outright, even though I was surprised that Houston was blown out in the way that they were. But Minnesota, I think, has a solid defense. Brian Flores is the coordinator now up there, and I think he gets the job done. And Sam Darnold has been effective as quarterback, even though he got dinged up at least a little bit in the game this past Sunday. So I think I had thought of Minnesota as a sneaky playoff contender, even though Green Bay and Detroit were both in that division, and I think I saw both of them as playoff contenders. I thought that Minnesota might have a solid team. I'm trying to look at and see what I predicted. Uh, no, well, we both actually predicted Minnesota to be uh, under uh, 7.5 wins this year. So maybe neither of us predicted that. I think,
Not
but
looking very good on that one so far.
no, but I guess I've really I've really come around on Minnesota now, but it's still only
Yeah.
3 weeks of the season. Sometimes having a strong start does not necessarily indicate you're going to have a strong finish. But I think when we looked at the quarterback rooms of Minnesota, we liked what we saw there because even though JJ McCarthy went down, we at least saw quality backup quarterbacks in Minnesota, but we didn't see that in any of the other divisional NFC North teams. However, it seems like now that uh, Green Bay did the right thing in going after Malik Willis when Jordan Love went down, and now is there a quarterback controversy brewing? If Jordan Love might play next week, but if the Packers play and Love loses, that would make the Malik Willis tr Packers 2-0, and the Jordan Love Packers actually 0-2 if they lost next week if Willis plays. But
Maybe that was what I was rooting for when I actually did make that pick this week too. So you taken Minnesota, I taken Green Bay plus 2.5 to Tennessee, and we were both right this week on
we were both right this week on that one.
NFC North teams, picking like on NFC North teams to win games that they're underdogs in. So
Yeah, my other two home NFC underdog teams were not as successful. Um, I predicted Detroit at Arizona. I predicted Arizona to come out and cover. I think what was a minus. Uh, they were +3 at home, and I thought
yeah,
Arizona um, might even win outright in that game, and
and they,
that
they played
game.
well in week two. So
Yes, they played well in week two, and Detroit played a little less well in week two, and
yeah,
I think Arizona looked actually pretty good in retrospect now against Buffalo in week one.
yeah.
So I thought maybe they could come out and maybe beat Detroit on the road, long road trip in Arizona, but that wasn't the case. They played a fairly close game, 20-13, but it turned out to be a game where the Lions covered the spread, so they won by 7 when they were favored by 3. So I missed that one going on the Arizona side, but that was at least I got one pick on my locks right this week. I didn't get any last week. You also improved from last week, so you were 2-1. I was 1-2. What was your second victory? But
My second victory was one that I was quite certain of was an over/under game with the Chargers in Pittsburgh. They both played all of their previous games well under the over/under line, and this one was set at only 36.5 points, and I wanted the under there. So it ended up being an 18-10 Pittsburgh victory, I think. Wasn't it something like that
20,
around there?
20 to 10.
Oh, it was 20-10. Yes.
Yeah, so 30 points were scored total.
So 30 points, but still comfortably under, well, not quite as comfortably as maybe wanted to, but
That wasn't even the
one
lowest.
Pipton.
It
Yeah.
wasn't even the lowest scoring game of the week, though. There were actually three games that ended up with only 27 points total. The Thursday night game, where the Jets won 24-3, the Seattle Miami game where the Seattle won 24-3, and also the Philadelphia New Orleans matchup where New Orleans lost 15-12 to Philadelphia. And that was my third bet of the week. I had predicted New Orleans, who was favored at home by, I think when I made it by 1.5, it ended up going up to 2.5. New Orleans was favored by, but they ended up losing outright to Philadelphia 15-12. So that was a low scoring, ugly affair. Clint Kubiak and his cavalcade of high flying Saints offense. I'm running out of my comedy K's.
Yes.
But Clint Kubiak came crashing back down to earth like a fallen colossus, and we'll see.
Yes.
So maybe we had some of those the high flying NFC South teams like Tampa Bay and New Orleans both ended up losing their first games this week. Maybe in
Atlanta too, I would say.
Atlanta's now 1-2. Yeah, so it's and I think the only team NFC South team that won this week was Carolina,
Yeah.
oddly. So
Just yeah, another very unpredictable week, really.
yeah, what was your third bet that was you ended up losing this bet?
Third bet was another like yeah, very surprising game. I had Cleveland -6.5 at home against the Giants, and Cleveland did not play well this one, and the Giants played very well. Yeah, that game ended up being 21-15. Apparently, the Giants did not miss any field goals this time, so they ended up like not losing on the three touchdowns versus all field goals game like they did the week before. But yeah,
Nope.
Cleveland wasn't able to score much. The Giants defense, which looked terrible early in the season, like apparently was at least okay. So that game not close at all for my pick because yeah, Cleveland would have meant to win by a touchdown and they ended up losing by 6. It's not
Yes.
close.
Yes, so that was I guess the game that we were the most off on, but it was only one. It doesn't matter how much you lose by, or how much you win by, only that you win or lose these games. And so, in
Yes.
terms of the locks of the week, I think I am now 2-7 in my 3 weeks, and you, Dr. Scaff, are 4-5,
4-5, yeah.
4-5. So you're closer to 500. We
Approaching 500.
we both are, well, this week I did much better in on the big board where I decided to go with my um, uh, top to bottom under picks for every game. I ended up getting 10 out of 16 of those right. And that under strategy also seemed to carry over in my other picks where I was 10 out of 16 on the money line and 10 out of 16 on the spread as well. So I had a great percentage of victory, and I actually won more than $800 this week, which almost was half of my losses from the previous 2 weeks. So I'm working my way back up to even money, and hopefully I have another couple of weeks like that. Maybe I'll go all unders again, although the unders are looking a little bit tougher this week than they were even last week, and that the Vegas is lowering the under numbers ever so slightly each and every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm well, we'll preview my bets in a little bit, but I have some under bets in my locks of the week for next week, which is maybe a signal that it will be an over week.
You're gonna pick all overs this week. No.
No, I'm not going to, but I could. I'm not sure I'm going to do all unders for my big board, but I still like the under. I think I have been getting away from my original stance was that I liked a lot of unders when we first started making these bets and the last couple of years, but I've kind of gone away from it lately to getting more
Yeah.
overs.
Well, that's what I had expected for the first game of the season. Is usually the offenses
Mhm.
aren't very good in the first weeks, and usually the defenses are a little bit ahead of the offenses. And this year was backwards, and it's just very odd. Like the season so far has been very strange, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
yeah, a little harder to predict than what you might like to see from the betting perspective.
yeah, this week somehow though I was in tune and it came out pretty well for me. This was actually your first losing week of the season, but you were just barely in the losing column.
Yeah, it's just down $49. Still at
Yeah.
the 54% correct pick right mark, which is just a hair below what what isn't that the magic number for break even?
Yeah, but I think that's on spreads
Right.
and over unders because you hover around you hover around minus 110 for those. If you're betting
Right.
$100, you have to bet 100. If you want to win $100, you have to bet $110.
But I haven't been winning on the money line very well
Yeah,
last week, so it makes it more like the spread over unders.
I ended up making one big win on the money line, and that was I actually predicted the
Yeah.
Rams to beat the 49ers, and that actually came through for me. So that actually helped put me in the position that I did get it, and that was one of the games that I saw. And that was a game where I when I first started watching it, I thought, oh no, I'm way off in this game because the 49ers were out to a big lead, but then they squandered that lead, and uh, the Rams came back and I thought the Rams were too good a team to be 0 and 3.
Yeah.
But I also didn't think the Niners would fall to 1 and 2 either. So it's a interesting out in the AFC in the NFC West where the Cardinals are 1 and 2, the 49ers are 1 and 2, the Rams are 1 and 2, but the Seahawks are 2 games up on everybody, 3 and 0.
Yeah. 3-0.
I don't think anybody saw that.
But now, are you surprised though with San Francisco with having all those key players out like McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel? That Brock Purdy still had a very good game. It still had 300 yards passing, even though it didn't have two of his primary weapons.
Yeah, he still had Ayuk, and I guess Jawan Jennings had a huge game. He had 3 touchdowns
Yeah,
and 175 yards receiving. Yeah, well, I think it just shows that Purdy's a pretty good quarterback, and even though he might be, also maybe the Shanahan system, you can kind of plug and play a lot of different people in it. Um, I think with McCaffrey out, they've still had a good running attack. So,
it
but
was Mason has done pretty well, I think,
yes,
as a
yeah.
replacement. So,
Mhm.
but they, like numbers wise, it doesn't look like there's much of a drop off.
No, in
And
San
that is like the
Francisco.
old Mike Shanahan teams in Denver, right?
Yes, when they had like a chain of 1,000 yard rushers after Terrell Davis, and then like it was I can't remember
Some
the
random guy, some
random
other
guys
random
like
guy. Yeah.
Olandis Gary and people like
It
that.
didn't matter. I was just like whoever got the call would rush for 100 yards a game, and then
Yeah,
like didn't matter. Since the offensive line was really good.
yeah, I think maybe
So
there's some of that. I think we remember the 49ers though last year went into a slump and they lost I think 3 games in a row and they still had a very solid record. So it seems like maybe they lose games in bunches sometimes in San Francisco. And that also happened with Debo Samuel. I think Debo Samuel maybe is their most important offensive guy. When he is out, the team doesn't do as well. And so he's been out 2 games and they've lost both of those 2 games. McCaffrey's been out all 3 and they won the first game. So maybe it's Samuel that really makes the makes or breaks the 49ers. But we'll see what happens when they start getting healthier. But yeah, Purdy, he had a solid game. Um, he's been solid all year, and it seems like he's going to earn that big contract pretty soon.
yeah, yeah. And that's gonna be a little scary actually, because that may, change the whole dynamic of the team because they've been able to save so much money at the quarterback position. Yeah, who are they going to have to cut basically to pay him, or they think they'll let him go to bring someone else in that they can
I don't think,
underpay?
yeah, I don't think they'll let him go, but I wonder if they try to lowball him a little bit. Um, Speaking of lowballing, should we talk about the Royals in there?
Well, should we talk about the Kansas
Oh,
City
well, we didn't even
Chiefs
talk
game
about
a
the
little more?
Chiefs. We didn't even
We
talk
haven't
about the
had time
Chiefs,
to.
did we?
Yeah, not
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
we haven't. I guess I forgot with the Chiefs. So the Chiefs ended up beating Atlanta 22-17 on Sunday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes had another kind of iffy game. He did throw for two touchdown passes, but he threw another kind of bad interception. The Chiefs defense came through in the end to stuff the Falcons. What were your biggest takeaways from the Chiefs' victory in Atlanta to push them to 3-0 on the season?
Probably so far it's been like, yeah, how much of a like number one receiver Rasheed Rice has looked like. Looks like he's, yeah, really become Mahomes' primary target, and usually it's that has gone to Travis Kelce, who's been somewhat absent almost on the
Yeah.
field. He's out there, but he's not getting too many looks so far. Do you see that as worrisome, or do you think that's actually good for the team chemistry as the season goes on? Just knowing that there's more than one option, making the defenses stay more honest. Then is that how you see it, or?
I can make myself see it both ways. I'm a little worried about Kelsey in that he hasn't gotten the ball very much. Although he had a couple of big plays over the course of the of in the first couple of games that were taken back by a penalty. So
Yeah,
maybe I think there was a big play in Baltimore against Baltimore that was, and maybe some other one maybe it was taken away by penalty. But he hasn't seen the ball as much. But yeah, it's really opened things up for Rasheed Rice, who's been I think he is maybe leading the NFL in receptions and in like second in receiving yards or something like that over through the first three games. So he's been really solid, and he's really it seems like developed into a number one receiver. It's hard to say who the number two guy is right now with Kelsey not being Kelsey anymore, but I think the Chiefs
or
just
at least just right now anyway.
yeah, maybe right now. Yeah, so far this season, maybe he
I think
had
he
a
is drawing a lot of like extra coverage though, so
mm,
it's
he's
because
had a
everybody knows
slow
that he's the primary
yes
favorite at least. So
yeah he had a slow start last season too, and he ended up starting to getting his numbers in. So maybe that's still the case, but he's getting older, and I don't know. But part of it I think is also Mahomes just hasn't been great either. He hasn't thrown for 300 yards in the game yet. He hasn't had an interception free game yet either. He's had, I think he's thrown for four interceptions in his first three games. So, eh,
man,
yeah,
there's been
it's,
kind of one pretty bad interception almost, seemingly in
Mhm.
every game.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah.
in that second game, there was one especially bad interception in that game where it
Uh-huh.
was, yeah,
Yeah, but he's maybe been kind of finessing his passes a little too much and trying to, it just seems like he's not himself in some ways so far. And maybe, also we had noticed that maybe he tweaked his knee a little bit in the kneel downs at the end. Uh, and we also talked about off the air how the over under betting numbers on Mahomes rushing attempts really tanked in with his final three kneel downs. He ended up, I think, losing 17 yards or something like that in his final three kneel downs.
yes,
To, maybe 13 yards in those three. Much
yeah,
very reminiscent of the first Super Bowl win of the Chiefs when he did those kneel downs and against the 49ers at the end of that game, where he kind of tried to take extra time off the clock at his kneel downs, and he went
yeah,
farther back each time.
yeah. And that especially yeah, like, it's worrisome though when he ended up like folding his foot a little bit,
And then
maybe sticking a
caught in the
bit, and
turf a
then
little
then sort
bit.
of like
Yeah.
kind of landed on it also. So yeah, that's actually, had he had injured himself on that play, he still would have had the over, because he with another 4 or 5 yards back on the next play, which took him through the over under prop bet number. So
Well, I'm glad that he wasn't injured,
not injured
and we didn't bet on the over under
on
numbers.
on prop bets. We haven't been doing
Profits.
prop
No, we
bets
haven't been doing
on regular
profits.
season games, and just
The
yeah, Super
playoff.
Bowl. So we really have been
Yeah,
looking at prop bets, I guess.
yeah. Some other hype later playoff games, but we'll see that. We'll come to the prop bets in a few months after this long regular season. But that was week 3 in the NFL. Any other Chiefs news we want to discuss, talk about, or should we?
Well, I know we've talked about a little bit, at least anyway, was the left tackle situation.
Hmm.
It does seem like Morris maybe now has taken the lead back in being the primary guy at the left tackle, letting what Kingsley maybe come along a little bit slower.
Yeah,
Could be his brain, I
Montague,
would say, right?
uh, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't. He played a few plays, but as a kind of a sixth tackle,
Yeah.
sixth lineman. But yeah, Wani Morris, you didn't hear much in the broadcast about him not letting Mahomes. I don't think got sacked at all in the game,
Mm.
um, and there weren't any penalty. There weren't too many penalties. Wasn't a penalty by either tackle, Taylor or Morris this past game. So that was a maybe a welcome change of pace. So maybe the line is settling in a little bit more. Carson Steele had a pretty good game running in place of Pacheco. Now it seems like Kareem Hunt has just been activated to the active roster, so maybe he's going to be the third running back now. Keontae Ingram, who was the third running back with Pacheco being gone, seems like has been released, and maybe he's going to be back on the practice squad. But yeah, it'll be Steele, Pirine, and Hunt going forward. It seems like, especially with Edwards-Helaire still on the inactive uh, injury kind of non-football injury list.
It sounded like in the broadcast they mentioned that he may be on his way back sooner rather than later too. So that may be a good sign that he may be
Yeah.
working his way back towards the
Mhm.
field. Would be great, especially now when they really need some more running back help.
Yeah.
Yeah, but another controversial official call in that game with the no call on pass interference in the end zone. Did you think that play would have been flagged as a pass interference in the end zone on the last series?
When they went back and replayed it a couple of times, maybe it looked a little bit more like it, but it seemed like there wasn't a lot of contact. The guy was just kind of
Yeah.
in the way. It was he didn't
Well, I
turn
think
his
they were both
head.
sort of like going towards the same spot, and the ball is underthrown, so the receiver sort of jumped into the defensive player
Yeah,
space.
and that happened, and that
That
works
makes
sometimes,
sense.
but it,
Yeah.
it wasn't quite as obvious as some other pass interferences that you'll see like that. So
Yeah.
I am that gets called sometimes. It doesn't get called all the time.
Yeah.
I think there were some other controversial penalties that were called on the Chiefs in that, in the last drive, especially where it seemed like every time Atlanta was moving the ball or not moving the ball, there was a penalty that bailed them out. Um, I think I think the officials there's a penalty on McDuffie that was like hands to the face and there wasn't a hand near the face, and
Right.
there were, I think the roughing the passer on Chris Jones was a little ticky tack. I think they called that as a makeup call for the Mahomes one, which also was a little bit iffy, but it looked like there was maybe a punch that was kind of thrown against Mahomes where Jones just kind of pulled down uh, Cousins. But also the one against Mahomes didn't matter because there was a touchdown that was scored on the play anyway, and it was a penalty on the extra point, so who cares? Um,
Yeah.
it was the one on the Chiefs actually cost the Chiefs a big play. So, it was yeah, you can always blame officiating on different things, but I think
Yeah.
I don't think the call or non-call cost the Falcons the game. The Falcons could have kicked a field goal there instead of going for it on fourth down, and then they could have just kicked a field goal at the end to win it, the way
Yeah.
it turned out. So they lost by 5, and they could have kicked 2 field goals and gotten 6. So
That is enough.
yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel pretty confident with the Chiefs defense being able to hold on those fourth down plays than in the red zone.
I am more confident than I was going into the game. I think the defense played pretty well. They after they did had a really bad first drive, but after that they settled in pretty well. The defense has been again solid for the Chiefs. Maybe not quite as dominating as it was last year, but still early. And you think that the offense will, catch up at some point and start winning games and hopefully winning games comfortably. And hope this starts with the game against the Chargers this week. That the Chiefs can actually, be the Chiefs of old and be an offensive juggernaut.
Yeah, it'd be nice to just see them score a bunch of points sometime because it's been a while since we've really seen that.
Yeah, we haven't really seen it since probably the Chicago game last year where they scored 40 something points. That was the only game they blew anybody out in. And I think that was about week 4 or 5, something like
Somewhere
that
in there,
last
yeah.
year. So maybe it's due this time.
It'd be nice to see. Yeah.
Speaking of nice to see, should we talk about the Royals finally getting a victory tonight after 7 straight losses? And is this their second 7-game losing streak this month? They hadn't.
Yes.
I don't think they had lost any more than like 3 in a row prior uh, to this month. They've really tried to lose it here in September. I don't know what is going on. Since Pasquantino got hurt, it seems like the offense has really cratered, and I think they only scored 1 run in the entire series against the Giants when the Giants came to town. They won tonight 1-0. But
Yeah.
yeah, what's going
So
on with the
so
Royals?
2 games in a combined 4 games. That's
2 runs in four
4
games.
games. That's not very many runs, Mike.
No, that is less than 1 run per game. It's
We've
only
we've
one half
we've checked
run.
the math, and that is not very many runs.
No, no. Um, and it seems like they wouldn't have scored a run tonight at all if they hadn't had the bequeathed runner on second base to
In the
begin
10th inning, yes.
10th inning.
So it took an
So
extra inning to get a run off of a guy that the league puts on base for them.
yeah. But they held the Nationals from getting any runs. So this was a victory. Hopefully it looks like the Royals now are going to be. I think they're 2 games up from the final wild card.
But they
The
have slipped into that tie with the second and third wild card, but they have a
Yes,
tiebreaker
yeah,
over
the
each
only
other.
tiebreaker over the Tigers
And it's
because
the Tigers who have now like jumped over the Twins too. So
yeah, the Twins have been not been almost as bad lately as the Royals have been. Uh, the Twins lost tonight 4-1, so the Twins are now 81 and 76. The Royals are 83 and 74, tied with the Tigers, so they're 2 games up. I think the Mariners are also 81 and 76. Um, so those are the 4.
81-77 now. So
Oh, the Mariners 81-77.
yeah. Yeah, so they're 2.5 back.
So they're
So
2.5 back. They lost to the Astros. Okay. So the Astros won the AL West tonight. But yeah, the Royals have no chance now at winning the AL Central. That has gone to Cleveland. But at one point, the Royals were threatening, but they've lost so many games lately. Is the Royals making simply just holding on and making the playoffs? Is that a successful season in your mind?
I mean, if you didn't know how it got to this point and just saw like last season's record and this season's record, you'd say it's a huge success. But it's just ending, the season's ending so poorly. I don't know how they're going to win in the playoffs. So I'm not really looking forward to seeing how this plays out. Um, some of their very kind of stupid tendencies are being exploited at this point in the season, like they should have, been lucky to get away with for most of the season. So this is, something that probably they should have been expecting. They
Does
should have tightened up a long, long time ago.
did Pasquantino really was his loss? Is his loss really what the Royals are feeling? Would they be if Pasquantino weren't hurt? Would they be in this position?
I don't think so, but it's still the players like overcoming management and the front office because of like how the strategies have been employing over the season. Like the players have just been outplaying the decision making, and sometimes that we lose one key piece. That's enough to like prevent that from being a possibility. So I think they had maybe benefited a little bit from some of the fresh players that they brought in all at once. So that maybe they put a spark into the team. But now that it's been a couple of weeks, then that spark has died off, and it's back to this sort of doldrums again. It seems like I'm not sure that Tommy Pham is playing like a leadoff hitter right now, and they don't have a cleanup hitter, and they don't have protection ahead or behind Sal. So I don't expect to see the season ending pleasantly, but it's still better than it was last year. So it's
Yeah.
it's gonna be disappointing though in the same sort of sense that it's you know
Well, you think
there's
that
like more negatives at the end is usually what you don't like to see.
well, the
The
starting
Reds
pitching has been
tended
all
to
right.
like play terrible for the whole season, and at the very end win a ton of games to make everyone excited about next
Yeah.
year, and then they start tinkering, and then the next season starts, and they go back to being terrible again. But this year, most of the season was quite pleasant, but this stretch is not fun.
No, at least the starting pitching has still been fairly solid. The offense has just not done anything.
Yeah,
So you think, well, maybe talking about next year, the Royals just need a couple of hitters. They need a couple of bats. I think pitching, they've been pretty good. I think, like you said, it's maybe the decision making in the bullpen more than the talent in the bullpen that's cost the Royals some games. The pitchers coming in the middle of an inning and leaving in the middle of next inning rather than simply stopping at innings end and putting a new pitcher in at the beginning of the inning. This is what happened this week, or this is his last game where Reagan's he pitched 6 full innings. Bubic pitched an inning, Long pitched an inning, Zerp pitched an inning, and Urseg pitched another inning. And there weren't any. You don't see any thirds of innings or things like that.
but
Uh,
typically where Reagan's finished the sixth was at 89 pitches. I think the Royals over the course of the season would have tried to get one more inning out of Reagan's, and but today they decided not to, which is the way they should always been handling this. So today ends up being the outlier, but it's the traditional logic that preceded that, like, actually like came through today, which is almost a surprise to anybody who's been watching the Royals play this much over the course of the season.
yeah.
But it's on the same day that they used a very illogical lineup. So it's surprising that they, can do one thing so poorly as a decision making thing before the game starts, and then the next time a decision makes, they actually make the right decision 3 times in a row. That's surprising, right? Not the first thing.
Yeah, I guess so. So
I don't know.
you're still not a fan of Mr. Quatrero and his
It's not that I'm not a fan of him. I'm not a fan of the execution of whatever his game plan is, whether it's his or the front office's plan. Because this doesn't, nothing seems like it's, you know, a baseball logic or a Moneyball type logic that you would expect from, somebody that came from the Tampa organization, which is basically, mimicking that Moneyball scenario, trying to make like a small market, inexpensive team work in a, finding something to exploit that the rest of the league doesn't value to figure out how to win games. And they're just cycling through endless amounts of players to find any kind of productivity for any stretch of time and then just jettisoning them into the ether, never to be seen again. So it's just been like an endless barrage of random people who kind of come in and out at different times, and that's not how the Tampa organization operated. It seemed like they were very carefully like selecting players that fit an exact role, and they would use those players in some strategic way that, you could
Yeah.
argue logically why they would do that. And there's nothing here has been logical in any sense. A old baseball logic or, new Moneyball era baseball logic. This doesn't fit any of those things. This is something else that is hard to justify in any reality.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And I don't know how his, Contreras' history, leads to these decisions that are being made for the team. It doesn't make sense. But because they've won so many more games than they had last year, like, they're talking about him as being possible manager here, which
Yeah.
is even more maddening because it's rewarding a strange logic for something that he doesn't really have anything to do with, right? For the outcome on the field, because this is really just players overcoming manager is the
Yeah.
story of the season.
Yeah. So they've won 27 more games so far this year than they have last year, and there's still 5 games yet to play. So the worst the Royals can be now is 83 and 79. And we hope that they will be better than that. Hopefully they will be closer to the 88 and 74 record, which would be the perfect if they won their last 5 games, they could finish 88 and 74. But even 86, 80, even 85, 86 wins will likely get them into the playoffs. Um, and
I think 87 wins would have equaled the biggest turnaround from a 100 loss team. So
mm,
they should have been, in that area,
yes,
earlier, maybe a week ago, if they hadn't had these like long losing streaks, here in the last month. Talking about it, Royals division rival that has played very poorly this season. The White Sox have gotten now equal to the worst record in the history of baseball, the 120th loss. They did win today, though, Mike, so they have 5 games left also.
yeah. Three
They
of
can
them
do
are, well, three are against
against,
Detroit. So
yeah,
who is the biggest competition to the Royals getting the second wild card. I see now that the Royals, since they won today, they were down to about 60% probability of making the playoffs. They're up again now to 81.7% probability of making the playoffs because of the Twins loss and the Mariners loss tonight. So that if that makes you feel a little bit better, this win seems to have really helped Royals playoff chances, which were like 95% even a week ago. Uh,
yeah.
but but those losing 7 games in a row really affects things, and also with Detroit being on their big surge lately, they have Detroit at 87.3% chance of making the playoffs at this
It
point.
does look very odd where the Royals are ahead of Detroit, by technical tiebreaker, at least anyway.
Mhm.
But the Tigers are actually, have a higher chance at playoff.
Yes, and the Royals run differential
Success.
because of their 7 game losing streak is actually down. It's below the Guardians now. They had a better run differential than Cleveland,
Yeah.
even though Cleveland was winning the division most of the season. The Royals still had a better run differential, but now the Astros also have a better run differential in the American League as well. So
Mhm.
that has changed since this past week, where the Royals were number 2, only behind the Yankees. So we have those issues. Um, the Royals, they play 2 more games against the Nationals, who are out of playoff contention. They're just trying to play out the season. But they finish with the Atlanta Braves, who are in their own playoff battle against the Mets for that last uh, wild card percentage. I guess along with the Diamondbacks are in that mix as well. Um, for the second and third wild card in the National League. So they're not going to play a team like the White Sox, who are just trying to play out the season like the Tigers are. They're actually playing a team that's attempting to make the playoffs. So they'll have to play even harder and to try to get some wins in Atlanta in the last three days of the season.
And Atlanta has won their last three games, so they're possibly on a bit of a hot streak. They still have the Royals to still have two more games against the Nationals, who are almost 20 games under 500. So they really need to win those other two games against the Nats and then figure out how to score some runs in that
Mhm.
stretch just so they can stay competitive. But you'd think
Yes.
that they'd have to win, if you win 4 of 5, you're probably going to finish in that two wild card.
Yeah, if they win 4 or 5, they're automatically going to be in the playoffs.
Well, they're definitely in. They're
Hmm.
in clear, but they probably get the number two wild card
It's
ahead of Detroit,
probably, yeah,
likely.
because Detroit would have to win all 5 that
Yes.
way. But you might say Detroit's got three, maybe is going to win 3 games for sure with
Mhm.
the White
This
Sox.
White Sox series.
I'd say that you would say, well, probably you would say they probably are favored to win like 2.7 games of that White Sox series.
Yeah. And then probably one more game at
Mhm.
least from the other series. So yeah,
Yeah,
they're probably at 3.5 wins.
yeah, they're playing Tampa, and Tampa doesn't have anything to play for, but except maybe trying to finish above 500.
Uh,
Tampa technically still is in the playoff race at 78 and 79. So if they won out, they could be 83 and 79, and the Tigers could lose out, and so I think they're less than 0.1% though for playoff.
yeah. You're saying there's a chance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's the Royals and playoffs. Should we move on back to the NFL and talk about Week 4 and our
yes.
Week 4 has some interesting matchups. Maybe we might think that the matchups this week are more interesting than last week. We have some big playoff teams battling it out against one another in Buffalo and Baltimore. We have 3-0 Seattle at 2-1 Detroit on one of the Monday night games. We won't mention the
Yes.
maybe we shouldn't mention the other Monday night game with the struggling Titans and the struggling Miami Dolphins, but we have some
Possibly
interesting,
with their third string QB.
yeah, yeah, we have some interesting games. Minnesota and Green Bay, I think, is a big game. We don't know exactly who the Green Bay starting quarterback is going to be, whether it's going to be Jordan Love coming back or going to be Malik Willis again. Um, we have, I think, New Orleans and Atlanta. Even though both those teams are coming off losses, they're trying to cement themselves as the best team in the AFC South. In Tampa Bay still there, but
But the game you're really looking forward to, though, is the possible revenge game, Detroit and the New York Jets,
Denver and New York Jets, yes, yes,
going against your favorite offensive
the
coordinator.
Nathaniel Hackett Bowl, where Denver is facing off against uh, Aaron Rodgers' drinking buddy, Nathaniel Hackett. That's why, because the Broncos wanted Aaron Rodgers so badly before they got Russell Wilson, they actually brought in Nathaniel Hackett, thinking that would get them Aaron Rodgers. Uh, that doesn't happen. Aaron Rodgers ends up going to the Jets the next year after a horrible flame out by Nathaniel Hackett as head coach. Now he's the offensive coordinator in New York, and Sean Payton maligned his predecessor quite a bit last year, and so we'll see
Yes.
what. And I think the Jets actually beat the Broncos last year when they played, if I remember correctly. Um,
It's
I can't remember exactly. It was post Rodgers, and I think maybe the Jets still
right.
won that game, but Denver is 7.5 point underdogs at the Jets. Is that one of the games you're going to be betting on, Dr. Scaff?
It is one of the games I'm betting on, but I don't want to pick who wins that one though. I just want to bet on the under on that one because it's I expect it to be a fairly ugly game and a low scoring game. And if one of the teams scores points, it's probably just going to be the Jets. Denver not scoring much. It seems like the Jets defense has been pretty solid. So that game, the over under is pretty low at 38.5, but I think that's still seems high to me.
Hmm.
So I'm taking the under that one.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about taking unders for all of the bets on my big board, but I am, spoiler alert, taking unders for all three of my locks of the week
Oh,
this week. Um,
it
my
worked. It worked pretty well for you on the big board.
It did
So
work well for me on the big board, and I wasn't super enthused by any of the spreads this week, so I decided maybe I'll just go back to my under roots and do some under betting. Uh, Cincinnati, Carolina. Cincinnati allowed a lot of points to Washington. Carolina scored a lot of points against the Raiders with Andy Dalton. Cincinnati actually scored a lot of points too against the Commanders in a 38-33 loss, but the over-under is 48.5, Cincinnati at Carolina. I think the Cincinnati defense is not as bad as it's been looking, and I think the Carolina offense is probably not as good as it's been looking. I don't know if the gap between Bryce Young and um, Andy Dalton is as huge maybe as it seemed in this past game. So I think Cincinnati, Carolina, it's the over under is 48.5, which I think is a pretty high score. I could see this game being I think since I still think Cincinnati, they're 4.5 point road favorites despite being 0-3. I still think Cincinnati's got to right the ship at some point and probably will win this game, but I could see this game being something like 28-17 or something like that, Cincinnati, and that would only get up to 45. So I like the 48.5 under for Cincinnati, Carolina.
yeah, I'm not. That's one of those that I'm not sure how to pick the game right now. But yeah, the under doesn't seem crazy at all for that one. So
Yeah.
no. Um, my my second pick. I'm gonna stick with the theme. I think of the day was the is unders, and I'm going back to the well that I went to last week, also with Pittsburgh. And their defense being able to like keep other teams at bay. And I don't think their offense is strong enough to get a lot of points on the board. They did make it to 20 this week, so I think that's about their high end as to what to expect there. Over under in their game against Indianapolis in Indy is a 39.5. They haven't been that close to an over under number yet, so I'm going to stick with the under there.
Yeah, I think I could see that falling under maybe even like a 17-13 game or something like that with that would be only 30 points. Even a
And they've tended
20.
to cover too, so I think
Yeah.
it's only like what is it 2.5 points
One and a
for the
half right
game?
now. One and a
Is it only
half
one and
is
a half? It is
is
only 1.5. Yes.
Pittsburgh favored by 1.5 on the
Yeah,
road.
that's a road team even. Yeah.
Yeah, I could. It's enticing. I think that under given how well Pittsburgh's defense has looked, also maybe how erratic Anthony Richardson has looked this year. He hasn't completed a lot of passes, and so I think that's a decent bet. I'm continuing the under theme as well. I've been picking the higher scoring unders games, the predicted higher scoring unders. Um, I have Washington and Arizona as my next pick. That is actually the over-under is 50.5 points, Washington at Arizona. I think this is so high because Arizona scored quite a few points against Buffalo earlier this year, and they scored a lot of points against the Rams. They didn't score a ton of points against Detroit, losing 20-13, and Washington with Jaden Daniels really had a breakout game against Cincinnati, scoring 38 points. So I think the 50.5 is a number that they're expecting fireworks again out in the desert, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I don't think Washington's going to continue to score that many points from here on out in the season. I also don't think Arizona necessarily is going to score a ton of points either. So 50 and a half is a high number. So I think I'm just going to play the percentages and just say it will probably be lower than that. So I'm just going to say under 50 and a half.
On one of the teams can score a lot of points, and just can't score that many points and still be fine.
Yeah, Arizona, if they score, if Arizona blows Washington out 34-10 or something like that, I'd be sitting pretty. But
Yeah,
uh,
it'll
yeah,
be fine.
yeah. Or if somehow Washington keeps Arizona down somehow and wins an upset, I don't see it as I guess as a 31 to 24 barn burner or something like that. I think I see it
Yeah.
as lower, but who knows? But I still like the under there. It's not, I don't like the under there quite as much as I like the Cincinnati Carolina under or my third under, but it's still a high number. And I think I think that's a somewhat safe approach.
Well, what is your third under?
My
Because I'm going to
third
break the trends. You may as well
Okay,
keep the trend
let's get the
going.
unders out of the way. My third under is the second Monday night game, Seattle at Detroit. Over under is 47 and a half. Seattle, I don't see them as scoring a lot of points. I don't see Detroit as scoring a ton of points either in this game. I think Seattle is 3-0, but I think they're kind of a flimsy 3-0. And I think Detroit they aren't quite as good as maybe I think of them as some teams people think of them as being, but I still think they're a solid team. I think Detroit will probably win that game, but I don't know if there's going to be I don't know if there's going to be a lot of fireworks. Detroit hasn't scored a ton of points this season.
Yeah,
They've kept games pretty close,
yeah.
and
Have they been
and
around 20 or so?
yeah, yeah.
But
So
that's if you think they're going to win and only score around 20, then the 47 and a half points is pretty safe.
Yeah, I don't think Seattle's going to score that many points either. I think
Mm.
Detroit's defense will hold Seattle down. It's in a dome, though. That seems to be a high scoring environment sometimes, but I'll think it's probably going to be something like Detroit. Maybe we'll say Detroit 24, Seattle 14, or something like that. This is what I predict as a kind of final
I
score.
think what Seattle's primary running back, Kenneth Walker's been out too, so I'm not.
Yeah,
I
Charbonnet
don't
has been playing pretty
think
well.
he's been. Yeah, really serviceably well, but they don't. I don't think they have the depth to go like beyond
Mhm.
that to have having Charbonnet as a backup is pretty great, but
Mhm.
he's the primary. Then they don't seem to have like a lot of confidence in their second, third string guys from what they have now, which would be their third, fourth string guys, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
move
So
them up one string each time.
yes.
How about your bucking the trend pick, Dr. Scaff? The non-under
Yeah.
of the day.
So I am finally gonna go, yeah, to a spread pick for the last one. And it's maybe a bit questionable because it is one of those tougher games. Uh I do think Buffalo played really well in their most recent game, up to 47 points against Jacksonville, and not allowing much there. So like I kind of see that as being something that you can look at for, what the next game could be. It's a much tougher opponent at Baltimore, though. It's a Buffalo is actually a 2.5 point underdog in the game, so I think Buffalo will likely win this one, and then being the underdog, I think that's for me seems like an easier pick anyway. Do you expect to see Baltimore going to 1-3 on the season, Mike?
Yeah, I don't know about that game. Just looking at it, I would say the way Buffalo is playing, you think Buffalo is going to win that game. Baltimore did right the ship against Dallas, but maybe Dallas is just really bad. It's hard to say. But I think Baltimore's a good team, but it seems like Buffalo's just really been a juggernaut. I don't know if it's been just the way their offense has clicked or the defense has been playing well too, even with some injuries. So I could,
Baltimore didn't like blow out Dallas. I mean, they
no,
got by a field goal, so it wasn't.
yeah, they were pretty far ahead early, but then allowed Dallas to kind of creep back in it.
Yeah,
So it's, I think that if I had to, I'm a little surprised that it's 2.5 points for Baltimore. I thought the way they're playing,
Yeah,
I would have maybe thought that is might have been a pick 'em sort of situation. Uh,
especially after last week's scores.
yeah. So I think, but yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of Buffalo action. So that might mean that the public will be right, but also might mean that Vegas is just trying to egg people on to go
Yes.
Buffalo. But I would lean that way. I would lean towards Buffalo too. So yeah, I don't dislike that pick. And
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting if Baltimore fell to 1-3, that would be pretty severe. But fortunately, and this it would almost mean that you would say that Pittsburgh, if they go to 4-0, is almost not yet, but fairly close to a I don't know if you could say as a lock to make the playoffs this early because if Cleveland hasn't looked very good, Cincinnati, the best they could be is 1-3. If Baltimore's 1-3 too, that would mean there'd be a 3-game lead over the rest of the division already for uh, Pittsburgh. So it's a it's a little strange. I think we wouldn't have seen that coming in.
Yeah. So those are our locks. Now, what do you expect to see from the Chiefs against the Chargers on Sunday?
Yeah, I don't know. With the Chargers, their backup quarterback now is Taylor Heineke, who may start that game. Justin Herbert aggravated his high ankle sprain against Pittsburgh, and I think the Chargers have a bye in week 5, an early bye. The Chiefs have a bye in week 6, I believe. So they have a fairly early bye too. But I think the Chargers might end up resting some of their injured players. We talked about Bosa. We talked about Joe Alt, their starting tackle. Derwin James is also being suspended for violent play this for next week. So maybe this is a game where the Chargers try to just sort of recover and make it through. 8.5 point spread for the Chiefs, though, is a lot. I don't know if that's something that they can cover. I don't, I will definitely pick the Chiefs to win. The
Yeah.
over-under is also very low, 39.5. I guess that's because they think the Chargers offense won't be very good, although
Mhm.
Johnston has kind of come along this season as a solid a solid wide receiver in his second year. But yeah, I if I go under, it will because I'm going under in all of the games this week.
Yes. Or we're
But
gonna go 15 unders and one over, and it's the Chiefs game over.
yeah, that's the question. Um, I don't know. I almost don't like that spread. I think it's too high because of the Andy Reid gentlemanly home stretch, the ARG uh,
Our,
offense that he runs, especially. I could see the Chiefs winning by a touchdown, but that's not 8.5 points. Um, I just don't know about this game. This is one I didn't really have to think about. Would you do you have an inkling on the Chiefs Chargers?
I mean, this is the game that all Chiefs fans will hope that it will be, the awakening of the offense, and the defense will play, kind of a lights out game. It'll be like something like 56-0 or something is what Kansas City fans are hoping to see, but they never seem to do that though. So it's probably going to be relatively low scoring, and the Chiefs are probably going to struggle a bit, but they'll probably look good enough, and they'll squeak through it. That's been the trend for the Chiefs for quite some time now. So I don't know why you'd want to deviate from that concept right now. It's going to be, maybe somewhere in that 21-17 kind of game.
Yeah, if I
You
go
could keep it like
under,
just barely under.
if I go under, I'd like a 28-10 game.
Yes.
Be the way I'd like to keep it under. It would cover the
Where they
spread.
cover though too, but they don't seem like they care about covering, right?
Yeah. But you would think, well, maybe they said once they score 4 touchdowns, they would stop and the defense would still be solid. Uh,
Yeah.
so it seems like the defense doesn't really allow the other team to score points late in the games that often. but the offense just seems to cool it down once it gets to that fourth quarter.
Yeah,
And I don't know. It's hard to predict.
yeah. The NFL, yeah, early season has tended to be very, more on the unpredictable side. I know, like our picks over the last several years have been, settling in somewhere in this area where we've, kind of got a grasp on what teams are good, what teams are bad, and it's still kind of early, so it's maybe not quite to where we're at that phase yet.
Yes.
So are you making bets in real life now that you can anyway, right? So and
I
that's going to be a ballot issue in Missouri here for the November
hmm,
elections too. So I may be able to bet while I'm in Missouri even, not having to go to Kansas to make bets right now.
I haven't made any since I bet on Dallas to beat Cleveland in week one. I probably haven't had the enthusiasm to actually go online and do any of that. But maybe I will. I've been busy with my new job and stuff like that, so it's been
Ah,
a little bit hectic. So I feel like I've spent most of my energy on the betting in the betting world on the Warning Track Power Hour uh, betting competition. So I'm but maybe I'll find maybe that if there was a spread that I really liked or an over under that I really liked, maybe I would go ahead and place a 10 $20 bet on. But I'm not I'm not there at this point.
haven't found
Um,
it yet.
no, I'm not going to go on the money line and say that I think New England's going to beat San Francisco on the road and plus 420, but there's so it would be something. Yeah, I don't see any of these none of these games really popped out at me as being locks. Uh,
Oh, I have to make that pick.
yeah, Dallas at the Giants is an interesting game. You think that Dallas will roll over on Thursday night, roll over the Giants. Dallas is favored by 5.5 on the road, but it's a Thursday game and Dallas is struggling and the Giants are kind of riding high. So I don't know what'll happen there. We'll have to. Do you have an inkling on the Thursday night special?
Well, Thursday night games are always especially hard to predict, especially early in the season. So, I mean, you'd have to think that Dallas would play well enough against that. I kind of have to see that Giants win as sort of a fluke
Mhm.
anyway. So I still don't think they're very good. Dallas doesn't look very good either. But I don't know. It seems like primetime games, Dallas tends to play better than they do, and
And the Giants
non-primetime
tend
games.
to not play so well in prime time, at least recently. Was it last year, 2 years ago, that Dallas beat the Giants like in that rainy game, like 48-0 or something like that, really bad.
Sounds
Um,
right.
um, and it might have been a Thursday night game too. I like the under 45.5 because I don't think the Giants have a great offense. I don't see them scoring 21 points against Dallas. I think their defense, even though it has been kind of iffy this year, I think Dallas still has a pretty strong defense against a Giants team that's not terribly explosive. But so I'd go the under. I'm more confident about that than I am about the spread right now. But yeah, I think I'd be like you. I'd probably lean Dallas on the road um, because I don't think the Giants are very good either. But they did win. They didn't win last week, so you never know. I think if Dallas ends up losing, I think that really shows that Dallas is maybe in trouble and might be headed for a big collapse at
Which
one.
you would find hilarious, though, I assume, right?
Yeah. I don't always. Dallas is one of those teams I don't really want to see succeed. I don't know. They're partly. I think it's the cockiness of Jerry Jones and the calling themselves America's team and things like that. But um,
Yeah.
I think
And the
they're.
weird, like, ongoing contract disputes that last sometimes well into the season before they get
Yeah,
settled or they just put it off till end of the year. It happens like every year. There's at least one player that they go through that with.
yeah.
The combined season matchup last year, Dallas and the Giants was very lopsided. Two combined game scores, 89-17, Mike.
So that maybe was the 48 to nothing kind of game that I had.
The first game of the season was 40-0
40
Dallas
nothing. That's what it
in
was.
Dallas, and then the mid-season game, November 12th, was on a Sunday, 49-17.
Okay.
So, and those were, different quarterbacks too. Daniel Jones started the early season game, and then Tommy DeVito
Tommy
the
Cutler.
second half. You've missed Tommy Cutlets, haven't you?
I have missed Tommy Cutlets, but I think I do think that Daniel Jones is probably a better quarterback than Tommy Cutlets, even though I think
Uh,
maybe the Giants might play a little bit better under Tommy Cutlets because they're somehow buoyed by his Italian American heritage. I think the fans will love Tommy Cutlets.
yes, especially in New York.
Yeah. Yes. So, um, well, we'll see what happens this week. Any other big games that have your eye, or should we move on and end this week's episode of the Warning Trip Power Hour?
Really looking forward to that Nathaniel Hackett Bowl game.
Yeah.
That's the one everyone's eyes are going to be tied to, seeing how Denver plays against their old coach.
Yeah,
Like,
I think the Philadelphia Tampa Bay game will be interesting as well.
yeah,
It's a rematch of a playoff game last year where Philadelphia lost. Both those teams are 2-1. I think if one of those teams comes out 3-1, they'll be a solid playoff contender. If they're 2-2, who knows? Uh,
Big
so
12 quarterbacks facing off
yeah,
in the NFL
former Oklahoma quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts
specifically, not just
and
offense, but
Baker
team too.
Mayfield. Yeah, if only
Yeah.
Kyler Murray could be involved, and Caleb Williams, that would be would be four of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. A lot of interesting games. 16 more on the slate, and we'll see how our bets turn out, how our predictions shape up, and we'll also be by the time we reconvene next week, we'll also see if the Royals are a playoff team or not. Uh, it looks like it's more likely to happen than not, but the Royals aren't making that easy on us. So we'll see what happens
They're
with
not
that.
giving their fans a lot of confidence.
No, no, but hopefully the Royals get that one of those wild card spots. Although you might say that you want the Royals to have, I think you want the Royals to have the second wild card spot because then they would play the first wild card team, Baltimore, probably in the playoffs over Houston. I think which would be which is probably if they would
Probably
play.
match up better against Baltimore.
I think they match up better against Baltimore than Houston as well, but um,
Mm.
I don't know if they match up particularly well against either one of those teams. But we'll they played Baltimore very, very early in the season, at least the first series.
Yeah, and so what the new playoff format is, it's the three-game series at the home team for the first round, for the wild card round.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
But we'll be much more aware of it as we get closer to the games next week, and we'll see how the Chiefs do against the ailing Chargers. But maybe they're simply a wounded bear rather than an easy pushover. We'll see what happens next week with that game, and we'll see what happens with the rest of the NFL season. Should we wrap up this week of the Warning Trek Power Hour, Dr. Scaff?
Let's do it.
As always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Trek Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast, which is available on many different podcast delivery systems. Even though I'm coming in very blurry right now, I think maybe I just am blurry.
What you're wondering right now is if you yourself have become blurry. It's not the
I do
camera.
wonder if I have myself become. If you're listening to the podcast, you don't probably hear the blurriness in my voice, but you can probably, if you're watching the YouTube video, you probably see that I'm a little bit blurry, and I can't quite
And then you can
unblur.
try to figure out if it's just your camera or if you
There,
yourself have become blurry. Oh, it
right.
must be your
I am
camera.
in much. I'm in back.
Or you have snapped yourself back into reality.
Somehow,
Like you were
somehow, yeah,
phasing out of, yes.
yeah. I
Maybe
was.
maybe it was a Back to the Future scenario where someone in the past is possibly fiddling with your history,
Oh, that
and
could be. And I
you
would
could have
never
been, you were about to phase out of existence.
I never, yeah, probably because they tried to kill Hitler, and somehow that ended up being resulting in a trickle down effect where I wasn't born. Uh, I would guess they probably wouldn't be going after me in my history because I don't think I'm becoming history's greatest monster. So I think it's probably some sort of uh, fluttering butterfly effect sort of thing that.
Or it's just your camera's glitching a little bit.
Well, that's
It's probably the first one though. I mean,
yeah.
why would we think it's just something so simple?
We'll do the reverse Occam's razor uh, on that count. But we'll talk more and more about exciting topics as reverse Occam's razors and blurriness, perhaps on next week's Morning Trek Power Hour, or even more unpredictable topics that we have no idea what will come this way down the pike. But it'll be exciting and hard hitting and hair splitting. That's for sure. You can count on that from us at WTPH. So we've already had my sign off, so I'm not going to do that again. But if we hear the One Trick Power Hour, are very happy that you are a listener and or a viewer, and we hope that you have good luck betting this weekend and watching the playoff final home stretch towards the playoffs in Major League Baseball and watching week 4 of the NFL season and any other sporting events that you might be interested in. And we thank you for your patronage, and we wish you a good day.